Hello and a warm collisions YYC. Welcome to my guest this morning, Chelsea Galloway and Adam Geiger. How you doing, you two?
Great, Tyler. So good to be here. Beautiful day in Calgary.
It is. I'm looking out. I can see through the top part of the window. I can see blue sky. I've got construction going on outside my house that they just pulled up. So hopefully nobody gets to hear that. I think we're okay. But big city gets big city problems. We'll talk a little bit about Calgary growing as a city and why you guys decided to move your business here. But we'll get to that a little bit later in the show. What the heck is an AlchemistOne? I have a copy of The Alchemist on my shelf behind me, so I don't want to jump to any conclusions, but you guys are both the co-founders of AlchemistOne. You've recently transitioned to be in the Calgary market, which I'm really excited to unpack a little bit. But let's start with Let Us Into the Tent. What's AlchemistOne all about?
Yeah, shout out to The Alchemist. What a wonderful book. I remember reading that for the first time at Chapters, crying my eyes out in public.
Oh, amazing. So I love it. It's on my shelf. Not the original one, but someone gave me this version when they wrote a nice inscription, and it's literally sitting on the bookshelf behind me right now.
I sent a picture to Chelsea with my eyes just full of tears at Chapters, and she said, "What are you doing?" But
if you haven't read The Alchemist, this is not a book review for The Alchemist, but go read it. If you haven't read it, go read it. No matter where you are in your life, you'll be like, oh, I see now. I get it.
There it is. Yeah. No, cool. So AlchemistOne is a daily companion mobile app for people that are struggling with addictions and some of those underlying issues that are kind of tied to addiction. So anxiety, depression, and really just getting overly lost and identified in our thoughts. So I'm a recovering addict. I've, struggled with a gambling addiction for 25 years, most of my life. And when it came time for Chelsea and I to decide what we wanted to do next after a successful exit in the software space in 2023, nothing really seemed important enough for us to kind of pull off the addiction space. So yeah, that's where we are.
Daily companion. I love that term. And it's so simple. It seems so obvious. That also feels very deliberate in terms of you calling it that.
It is, yeah. So we're not trying to be a replacement for any of the current modalities that exist in the space, right? Personal, in-person talk therapy, huge, very important. 12-step groups, whether they be AA, NA, GA, whatever it might be, very, very important. There's beautiful relationships to be built there. I've experienced all of these modalities myself. The thing that seems to be missing is what happens between meetings? What happens between sessions with the counselor or the therapist? It's a overly stimulated world, and our thoughts can very easily get kind of lost in the shuffle. So we wanted to build a daily companion that was there for you 24/7 and that could provide that support on demand when you needed it.
Appreciate that. And I don't want to go, this is a slippery rabbit hole question that I might open up right now, but even just, I've been an addict for 20 years, and in the same breath, you just had you said you just came off a successful exit in 23. I think it's so easy to think about addiction as this other person's problem. Like, oh, that person on the street, they have an addiction. What I'm hearing, if I'm drawing my own pieces together, and I think it's maybe valuable to just frame when you say the word addiction, it's easy to put it in a category, but there's also a lot of us there's a walking addiction. I'm still functioning in my life, but yet I've got this other thing going on. I think there's just something too where it could easily go, oh, how could you be an addict and also have a successful exit? That doesn't make any sense. But I think the reality of how much more common these types of things are, maybe it's something worth touching on just at the beginning. I don't know, just the thread that I kind of pulled out of kind of what you just said, Adam.
Yeah, I think one thing I heard in a 12-step meeting once is that addicts are not unintelligent people. Quite the opposite. Actually, addicts are really highly intelligent people that just get lost in thought, and the addiction is the escape, right? So I think highly functioning CEOs, software engineers, whatever it might be, in some ways are more susceptible to addiction because we have these very intelligent, overactive minds. And when we don't really know,
the top is spinning a little bit too quick for its own good sometimes.
100%. And then what do we escape to? For some of us, it's very destructive diseases like my gambling addiction cost me millions of dollars, and beyond the money, just time and love and all of that wonderful stuff that
it gives you here, but it robs you very severely over here at the same time, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, no, I think highly functioning addicts that are successful in the business world or the tech world or whatever it might be are incredibly common. And we're seeing an uptick in that, especially with the legalization of gambling and how much it's really perverse the sports world. We're seeing so much more of it.
And we talked about this in our pre-call, kind of predilection for males specifically around sports gambling, and also males being notorious for not asking for help, and some of the things around just mental health and men's health. Not to make this about men versus everyone can suffer, but I know when you and I chatted, there's definitely an unserved group that certainly is larger than maybe most of us, unless you're informed in the space, even are aware of.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's such an interesting time that we're living in right now. You've got young men that, many grow up having some tie to sports. You grow up playing, you feel like you understand the game, and all of a sudden there's this thing now that's legalized and really overly marketed that, hey, I can make a couple extra bucks on the side with this knowledge of this thing that I love. But if you have that X factor, if you have that gene inside of you that is susceptible to addiction, like I did and millions of others do, it can very quickly spiral into something that just really takes over your life and destroys you. And if you are that high functioning, really intelligent person, reaching out for help and being very vulnerable is difficult. So we've tried to build a product that it's not traditional social networking. You're not necessarily opening up to others and walking kind of that song and dance. It's designed to be an intensely personal, spiritual journey, really getting back to your true self and away from that distraction from thought.
So talk to me a little bit about, I'm going to loop Chelsea in on this because we kind of preset before who's going to talk about what. From the business hat, not that you both don't wear it from, I'm sure, as co-founders, and you wear many hats in this journey. What was the journey around, hey, this is a viable startup for us and this is something that's also a passion that we believe in. I mean, you put your business hat on. How was the juggling act in the early days of understanding of like, this is a calling. I think this is important. Also, I think this is actually viable. Like there's sometimes a fine line between a passion and a hobby and a business, especially in the early days. Chelsea, any comments on some of that soul searching when you guys were making that initial decision?
Well, I think we were in a position where we had a little bit of time to think it through. We didn't have to jump into anything quickly. We had a few months. We were living that nomadic lifestyle, trying to figure out
digital nomads.
Exactly, yeah. Trying to figure out what we were going to do next. And obviously, this was a deeply personal thing for us. And in doing the research and seeing what was out there for people and knowing Adam's experience and the options that he had, we really felt that something like this was necessary and was something that was going to be marketable and something that people would maybe want to consume if they were in their addiction recovery journey. So for us, from a business standpoint, we took the traditional steps. We figured out, what our competitors might look like. We talked a lot with Adam's recovery network to kind of see what might be out there. And then I think for us, when it really did become real, Adam had spent a few months coding and building the product. We had an opportunity to pitch to some investors. And I think we had, a 2-3 hour conversation with them. And that's for me the moment where it became real and it became, this is something that other people are willing to get behind, that we now have an opportunity to really put our everything behind it and build something that we can bring to market and hopefully start to help some people.
Thinking about that first audience that you had with those investors, were these investors that you knew or had prior experience with, like the value of track record? You just exited, you had a successful exit. People tend to really rank, oh, you have done this before, maybe in a different space. How much was that a factor in those first conversations with some of those investors versus maybe somebody who this is their first, venture into the space, pun intended?
I think we got very lucky.
Okay.
So I have made a number of wonderful connections inside of 12-step groups. And kind of going back to the earlier part of this conversation, there are some very, very successful people in those rooms. And Chelsea and I were able to build a relationship with an individual in that room that then led us into a room where there were, really high worth people that were willing to get behind this idea. So okay. I think the fact that we have done this before, that we've proven on the business side that we are successful and that we've done this before was one thing. The fact that we have the means to stretch a dollar pretty far because, I can code, I can do the things that I need to do. Chelsea's a killer on the business side and she's proven that. So, and then, just our ability to get into government funding and things like that, I think really just vetted us to a place where we were able to secure that investment and give them the confidence that we were going to be able to pull this off.
all, and I like you said, lucky. You know, the harder I work, the luckier we all get. But it is a series of fractional opportunities that happen, and one room gets you into another room and gets you into a conversation. And you've obviously got a topic that I think is getting a lot more airtime now, thankfully, not being swept under the rug or thrown behind closed doors. So there is a trend of a little bit more awareness that, hey, this isn't someone else's problem. This is something that we might encounter, or the people in our lives are suffering. We don't even realize. When you guys were looking at your competitive set, Chelsea, you mentioned it. Is it the mindfulness app community? Is it the pure addiction recovery? Is it the all the online access to therapists? And it's a complicated space. And sometimes wayfinding for an individual who's looking for help, it's like landing in Calgary and being in the startup ecosystem. There's so many little pods, which we'll talk about, of who can help you. And I know that I have a lot of friends that have gone through different journeys, from just kind of, hey, I need to get over some stuff, to like, I got an addiction. Those first few steps of even knowing where to go and who to talk to, how did you categorize what your competitive set looked like? Because it feels like from the outside it might be broad, but maybe I'm actually don't know it enough to be able to narrow it in.
I think it's evolved since we initially started. When we first started looking, the first search was, addiction recovery apps. And we found a handful of them. None were overly inspiring to us, or to Adam specifically, as somebody who's gone through recovery for a number of years. So we wanted to build something a little bit differently. Mindfulness is a major part of our app, so that then led us into that space and kind of figuring out what that competitive set might look like. I think what's ultimately set us apart is that there is still that piece that's lacking in the actual addiction space. So while there's a number of really great apps out there for meditation, and there's a number of really good apps out there for digital therapy, none of them really fine tune into addiction recovery.
Okay.
And a lot too aren't. One of our sayings is, built by addicts for addicts. I think that's a critical part in us distinguishing ourselves from our competitors, is that, Adam has walked that journey for most of his life. And has really come to understand what that addict mind needs and what it looks like. So the deep dive into our competitive set, I think that's really one of the things that's become important to us, is to really just distinguish ourselves into that addiction space specifically.
I appreciate that. And there's something I've heard said on the show many times: don't fall in love with your version of the problem, fall in love with your customer's version of the problem. Mm-hmm. To your point about built by addicts for addicts, there was an opportunity from a credibility perspective to really understand both sides, like that whole cycle or circle or infinity loop, however you want to draw it out on the whiteboard, kind of thing. Mm-hmm.
And it's
go ahead.
I'll just kind of add it. The built by addicts for addicts is such a core part of what we're doing, and it's certainly expanded beyond just myself. We've made a few recent hires.
You beat me to my next question, Adam.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah,
I saw it coming.
What does that look like from a perspective of being able to bring people into the fold that have a deep connection to this challenge, but also a deep passion to help solve it?
Yeah, so I guess the first sort of foray into hiring was bringing on Cez Christensen. She is just a wonderful human being, an acclaimed writer and poet out of Australia, out of Sydney, but also someone that has struggled with addiction. So when we talk about building mindfulness content and meditations and things like that designed specifically for addicts, who better than someone that has walked the path of addiction and has come through it, understanding mindfulness and meditation and concepts like, non-duality to be helpful in the recovery journey than someone that's walked it, and Cez is that person. So she was our first hire, and she talks openly about her journey and has just provided a wonderful bank of content as sort of the foundation inside of our product. We can talk about sort of getting into the deep tech of what we're building that kind of goes beyond just the sort of the mindfulness side of what we're doing. And in that space, we hired Jordan Elvidge out of Toronto, and he also has struggled with his addictions as well in the past. So having a team of people that really understand what we're building, why we're building it, and get deeply passionate about it. When you have that passion and you have that purpose, really beautiful things start to happen, and we're really starting to see that. It's really, really cool.
Well, if I think about, you've got the business and being a new venture and being in the venture space, getting funding, getting grant money, non-dilutive, getting investors. You've got the deep tech of we have to make it function. Then you've got have you brought in, do you have anyone on your team where you've been consulting? Like, is there a clinical aspect to it? And of course, I haven't used it. I've been through your website and I've looked at it. Is there that clinical side? Like, I'm thinking about all the pillars. You've bit off, there's a lot to chew here. There's the tech side and making sure it functions. There's the business side to make sure we can support it and fund it and build something that can go somewhere. Then there's our modalities and what we actually believe is going to help or not help. How have you juggled, or what's that look like between all those different? And maybe I'm missing some too.
No, it's common, and Chelsea has been doing an incredible job reaching out to the clinical community. Chelsea, okay. Did you want to maybe talk a little bit about that?
Are they open to it? Are they excited about it?
Yeah, I think from what we found so far, yes. We wanted to approach this with a certain intent. We wanted to play with the product a little bit, sit with it ourselves and with our team before we went too far into, I'll say, the mental health community and mental health professionals. So we're at the phase now where we're starting our initial reach out, having initial conversations, figuring out what a licensed therapist or a counselor, a psychologist finds important in the treatment of addiction recovery, what they think could be the benefit from an app. So we've begun that research. So far, the response has been really strong. Okay. I think I was laughing with our team yesterday, kind of saying, I've only had 2 people say, don't contact me again.
Out of how many? Because that number only, if you called 4, that's a good. If you called 100, then that's a great number.
Yeah, we're at a couple hundred right now. And I think.
Okay. And you only had 2? That's pretty solid stats. Yeah. Okay, I love it.
and more so, we're getting, more and more responses from people saying, I'd love to sit down and have a longer conversation with you, or this is something that's top of mind in kind of my own practice and the things that I'm dealing with. So that's been helpful for us. And, as we go down that path, we definitely want to get connected more into that space, into the university space, making sure that, we are aligned with the ethics of the industry too, and that we're providing the right support and giving people the right tools.
I can imagine in any space when you introduce a new way of tackling something that's been like, addiction therapy, mental health, that's been around for a while, there's often mixed reactions. Some people like to lock it down and kind of build the wall and hold new out, where I'm imagining the ones you get to talk to that want to talk to you are the ones that are like, hey, yeah, we need to do better. We need to do more. I'm here to help. Like, I think that would resonate across, but you get into any clinical type environment, sometimes there's a resistance to change as well. And, not to pick on good or bad, but that's just a reality when you're bringing a new way to tackle something to the table. Mm-hmm. Not everyone's open and excited about the new thing.
I think too, like we're very conscious of the fact that we're not trying to replace traditional therapy or all of those things, right? So it's more to complement and to make sure that people always have the support that they need.
When you're in that room with those initial investors, or even maybe now, so what are some of the questions that you get asked? Like, I'm thinking about the other founders that are listening to this, and is it scalable? Do you own the tech? What about this? What's your runway? Like, what are some of the questions that you would say were the most frequent that early on you heard from the business community? They go, yeah, okay, we're bought into the idea, but what about this, this, and this? Anything that comes out that was also good stuff to share, to be prepared for the person who's listening, who's maybe 6 months before you guys on their journey? Mm-hmm.
One of the first things that's coming to my mind is, how are you innovative?
Okay. That's a really broad question.
And is your product innovative enough? What sets you apart from the average app that's out there,
Fair question,
helping people stay on track or build good habits? That's one that comes to mind for me. I don't know.
Has your ability to answer that refined over time?
I think so.
I bet it has. I bet it has. How are you innovative? How much is scale, and are they looking for unicorns, or are you talking to investors that are like, yeah, I know this might take a while, but I believe in it, and maybe not every company is going to be a unicorn, but that doesn't mean it's not going to be successful. And I think there's a balance there, right, in the venture space.
Yeah, I think, to be completely honest, I mean, I'm not sure we're in the unicorn space.
Okay.
And I think approaching it that way, it sort of eases the pressure and allows us to be exactly what we need to be in this moment and who we need to be for. And I think when you approach it that way, not trying to be a unicorn, maybe unicorn things can happen. right? Right. When you take the
I
pressure
often
off,
find I have better chance of catching things when I'm not directly chasing them. But that's a whole another philosophy on the harder you chase something, the often you just keep kicking the ball down the road.
yeah, I think it's
just showing up and doing what you're there to do, right?
I think Chelsea and I saw that in our personal lives. For anyone listening, Chelsea and I are actually married. And when we stopped looking in our mid-30s, we found each other. And it was absolutely perfect.
It's hard not to think about relationships when I made that comment. Absolutely where I was going with it. You picked up the thread of so many friends like, that's it. I'm done with this online dating. It's bullshit. They go to some random party and meet the love of their life like 2 weeks later. It's hilarious. It seems to happen more often than not. How long were you guys married before you decided to also be business partners? Or were you both involved in the last exit as well? Just to talk about, because partnership can be a make or break. And when you add marriage into it and dynamics, that's a lot of complexity or a lot of superpower. And maybe both. Maybe both. Chelsea, I'll let you answer this one. You're both smiling. Sure. They're both smiling, everyone who can only hear the audio. Can you hear the smiles?
Well, we're actually pretty newly married. We've only been married for about 5 months.
Okay, I did know that. So super shiny. Okay, right on. Super. So you were business partners before you got married.
Yeah.
What does HR? What does HR have to say about that?
We disclosed our relationship
early on. Very good. Smart. You played by the rules.
Yeah. So we've been together for a few years and pretty quickly started working together. Because I think partially because we wanted to live more of a nomadic lifestyle. So I was able to join Adam and his previous business partner in their last venture on their sales and business development side. Adam was a co-founder of that company. And so that was really our first foray into working together. And it worked well. I mean, we were pretty separate in that entity where I was on sales and business development. Adam was very much on, high level coding, building the product. But we were, thinking about this yesterday going, we really don't know any different. We've kind of always worked and lived together. And I guess the interesting thing is that when we got married, we were really in the height of, we had just secured our investors. We were just about ready to launch our product. So it was a really intense time.
Sounds like a perfect time to throw a wedding in there.
Throw in a wedding and then that kind of thing. But I think the dynamic has just worked really well for us. And it's really all we've ever known as a couple. So.
Very cool. So back to you are now business partners. Is it very clear my role, your role? Like there's nothing will blow up a business quicker than a partnership. And I've heard, the second you start losing trust or you start wondering what that other person is up to and you start playing that narrative can really destroy a relationship. How do you guys thinking about someone from the outside, any recommends or like, how do you really keep things clear when you're both running 100 mile an hour?
Yeah, I think it's pretty easy for us in terms of sort of being in our own lanes and having quote unquote division of labor. I am very good at what I do on the technical side. I don't think Chelsea would have any idea what she was doing if she were diving into Xcode or Android Studio. And on the partnership side and reaching out and building connections, that's something that Chelsea is absolutely incredible with, and I trust her.
And many people find that terrifying. So it's good to have it.
Me too. That is
calling people randomly. No, what are you doing? That sounds terrible. and I appreciate. I've been married for 20 years, but I've also been in a business partnership for 15 years. And the strength was always, this is your role, this is my role. This is how we would have shareholder chats and then also have like in our role chats. We used to purposely like wear different hats, almost exaggerated. So we were always clear on who was accountable for what. Like, is this a shareholder conversation? Like, are we happy with what the CEO and the creative director is doing or not? And we would literally play with the perception of it just to be really clear on who's doing what and how we're holding each other accountable. And 16 years later, it's still working out.
Yeah, it's really cool too. One of our favorite things to do here in Calgary, especially in the winter, we've really only known the winter. We just moved here a few months ago.
You got a pretty easy winter. I'm sure you've heard that from other people. Like, you're like, is this winter here? This is not so bad. Don't be careful. It can swing on you real quick. But anyways, we'll talk about weather.
We've got the plus 15 walkway right downtown here, and Chelsea and I go for 40-minute walks twice a day, and 35 of those minutes are talking about the business and ideating and things like that. And
I love a good walk and talk.
It's so fun to be able to just bounce things off each other as partners in multiple senses. But yeah, and it's just I just trust her implicitly, and I think the deeper you get into addiction recovery, the deeper you get into mindfulness and understanding the people, places, and things in your life and what they're going through and how they're going through it, those egotistical blow-ups, or maybe my way or the highway type moments, really start to dissolve, and partnerships become much, much easier. Saying this, if any former business partners or things like that are listening, I wish I would have had this level of awareness 15.
I see you're
5 years
already
ago.
responding to potential eye rolls that might be happening out there in the world right now. Listening,
Like what is Adam talking about? I've never known him that way, but certainly. Things have changed quite a bit. So the moments where Chelsea and I do maybe not see eye to eye, it's easier. It's so much easier now to just apologize and get back to love and respect. And it's been great for sure.
I appreciate using those terms in the context, because it still is a human. We're still humans having a messy experience, right? At the end of the day, whether it's work or life. Let's touch on. I'm dying to. You purposely moved to Calgary.
We did.
And that sounds weird, but you're not going to accidentally move anywhere probably. But you picked up your business and you said, we want to come to Calgary because of. Talk to me a little bit about that decision.
Yeah. So, we've kind of touched on the fact that we were moving around for a few years. We've lived in a lot of cool different places. We got to the point with our business where we said, we probably need to go and settle down for a little bit, focus a little bit more on those in-person interactions, building a bit more of an actual community. So we started looking at places. We're from Regina, Saskatchewan. We have a big community there that we're involved in. I worked in, economic development and tourism for, 10, 15 years, was very involved in the business community there. So that felt like an easy choice. But as we started to make connections, I think, the first conversation we had was actually with RBCX, Stephanie and Carlos from there, and they're both based in Calgary.
I just had Rahan on the other day, the director of RBCX for Western Canada. I just had him on the podcast last Thursday, actually, to kind of talk about the work they're doing. So that that we just made the one connection in 1 minute kind of Calgary game, right?
There you go. So
Awesome,
we had a couple great conversations with them, and then kind of just I think I said to them, honestly, tell us what it would be like if we came to Calgary. We're looking for the right place for us to be, personally, and to explore more things for our business. And they, gave us a really good pitch that made
Clearly
us excited.
It worked. They landed it. They landed the pitch. Yeah.
Yeah. But also, I think one of the things that we've noticed is that they were very quick to say, you need to talk to this person and this person and this person before you make any decisions. I think some of those groups were Calgary Economic Development and Alberta Innovates. So quickly had conversations with them, Zach and Pej, at those organizations. And then we ultimately made a really quick trip here to make a decision. And we were, over at Platform, had a great tour there. And I remember, walking around downtown after that visit and kind of going, this kind of feels right. There's, a lot of talk about tech here, a little bit more open, to our industry. And, we're walking down Stephen Avenue and we heard some people talking about their tech startup.
So that's awesome. Okay, very cool. That's great.
It just kind of felt like
you had the serendipitous experience.
Exactly. Yeah. And so it just kind of felt like, maybe this is the next place for us to go and explore and see if this is the right place. And I think that has really shone through since we've arrived here. People follow through on what they say they're going to do. So if it's, hey, you should really meet this person. It's not, an empty comment. It's a follow-up,
It's not
usually,
winks and guns, as my friends say.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to treat okay, winks and guns person. That's enough. That's funny. I love that. The ultimate cheesy salesperson kind of thing.
Yeah.
No,
So,
Calgary follows through. Because I do say that. So you're really validating my thesis at this point. So I appreciate it.
Yeah. So we found that part to be pretty great. And, it's how we met you as well. So
Jade, we'll give Jade Alberts credit for
Yes.
Jade's a great connector and just a big personality. And if you're in this atmosphere or in this ecosystem at all in Calgary, you've run into Jade somewhere along the way. Jade's great on the intros and the follow through. How long have you been on boots on the ground here now?
pretty much November 1st. So about 3 months.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's only February. Wow, that's great. And so far, any real surprises? Because it sounds like everything you've described. I'm glad to hear, because I love to believe that is our brand. Any surprises? And this is for somebody listening who's maybe thinking about the same journey. Good or bad? This is the honesty circle right now.
I don't think any surprises per se.
Okay.
I'll bring to light maybe one little moment of frustration that we had.
Nice.
And then I'm going to bring it down to earth and kind of the realization that we had around that. So one of the conversations we had pretty early. I think it was right after the conversation we had with Stephanie and Carlos was a chat with Alberta Innovates. And we left those conversations feeling like after a move to Calgary, funding opportunities were going to come quick and easy. And not to say that they told us they would come quick and easy, but maybe we felt after those conversations, like if we made the commitment to come to Calgary, certain funding opportunities were going to be pretty close to layups or slam dunks, to use a sports term. So we were really excited about that. And then I guess the reality set in that there was going to be quite a bit of work that was going to be required to land those grants, and the timeline wasn't going to be quite what we thought. So full transparency, we were a little bit frustrated, and I don't want to say put out, but I'll say put out because that's just the raw emotion and reality that we were feeling.
You had an expectation, however it got created, that all of a sudden was like, whoa, wait a second.
Yeah.
That's also just like that. Thank you for giving yourself permission just to be human in that. Like I was a little annoyed. I was a little pissed off.
For sure.
and sometimes you feel what you feel, right?
We felt that way, but then talking about it and bringing it sort of back down to planet Earth, it's not Alberta Innovates' job. It's not anyone's job to make starting a startup easy, right? Like it's really difficult to start a startup, and money does not grow on trees. It's not supposed to be easy. And looking at the sort of entirety of the experience that we've gone through, the work that we've done to kind of get into the position to get these grants it's been very, very valuable work to help us understand our market, understand what we're building, do deeper dives into our competitors, really check all the boxes so that it's not just a giveaway. It's not a handout. So when you really sit and think about it, we appreciate what's been given, even if it hasn't been given at sort of what we were expecting, kind of landing, like you said, in Calgary early November. 10 out of 10 though. The Calgary experience has been wonderful, and like Chelsea was saying, kind of backing that up, that there's a real follow through culture here that we've seen too, and it's a selfless culture. I mean, you didn't have to invite us on your podcast, Tyler. After one meeting, Jade certainly didn't have to do that. We were on his podcast.
I really liked
recently.
you guys. Selfishly, I just like chatting with you, and I think that what you're doing is pretty cool. The thing about running a podcast when like it's your podcast, I just have people on that I want to talk to selfishly, and then my audience also does enjoy it. So it's a great, very self-serving, but also in service of at the same time. It's a great little formula.
Yeah, it's the perfect blend. But we've seen that with you and many other people in Calgary, and it's really only been 3 months. So excited to see where the next 3, 6, 12 months go.
Thanks for sharing that, and like the honesty of like it just made me feel this way. But then when I brought it back down to earth and I realized it, and the powerful statement you just said, but it's not anybody else's job to make it easy. This isn't easy, and it's not I'm not putting on my cape and soaring off into the sunset. Like this is hard. This is hard work. Mm-hmm. Not to deviate a different question around the grant topic, because I get how you positioned it. What's the risk for startup founders and grants pulling you away from your core or pushing you in the wrong direction to meet the objective of what the grant criteria is? Like that non-dilutive funding isn't free in other ways. And I've heard companies go like, when we finally got our head out of the sand, we realized that we got pulled off track because of what we were chasing. Any commentary on that you're both nodding. So this sounds like this maybe been something you've discussed.
Yeah, amazing question. I'm honestly still trying to wrap my head around it because I think it's something I've experienced more so in the past. Chelsea, did you have any like top of mind thoughts in that space?
I think we've had that exact conversation when you go to sit down and go, okay, are we just chasing money for the sake of chasing money? Do we actually need this for what they want to spend it on?
Yeah.
So you can easily get taken into the weeds, even with investor pitches or whatever that might be. So I think for us too, we have kind of sat back and go, okay, wait a second. This is going to take us, 30, 40 hours to write this application. What can we truly get out of it? Are those hours better spent somewhere else based on the return of the kind of money that we're going to get put into the project? So, I think the most important thing for that is having a good relationship with the people that you're, trying to leverage money from, and having those open conversations going, this really isn't working for us necessarily. Could we pivot it this way slightly? Could we maybe focus it more on this initiative? And I think we've had good luck with that so far. And we've had, funders that have been in our corner and have their ears open too to things that might work better for our business than just kind of that standard application that might be available.
I don't want this to sound trite, but having the right partners is the make or break, right?
Huge. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a little bit of confidence that comes from, this isn't your first kick at the can, you've had a successful exit? We could do a podcast just on that. I'm resisting diving into that because that we could take it the next 20 minutes talking about that. I might have you back on to talk about that exit because that, everybody chases that and there's so much that happens between now and then. Is there coming at it with a little bit more confidence as early stage founders that have done this before? That's got to put a different filter on things for both of you.
It does. Yeah. And I think sort of the carrot there at the end is that successful exit. But my goodness, the amount of heartbreak and pain and sweat and tears that goes into that, and not even just with that one company, the years and years of quote unquote failure.
You mean the 20-year overnight success stories?
Yeah. God.
No one was celebrating me when I lived in my van. You guys did it out of choice, but you know what I mean. Anyways, I'll stop that joke.
Yeah.
No one's writing articles about me then, but oh my God, this is amazing. How did you do it? By hard work and blood and sweat and tears and lots of pain and suffering and elation all on the journey, right?
Yeah. I mean, as a recovering gambling addict, when I was in the depths of my addiction, I actually did live in my car for quite some time. So that joke lands.
Not intentional, but thank you. I got it.
Yeah.
No, Tyler, I know exactly what you mean. I live in the van down by the river, and but having that confidence of knowing and being able to identify what is a good partnership and knowing. Again, I had someone say to me years ago, you're defined so much more by what you say no to, not what you say yes to. And as a startup founder, that's literally daily, right? That situation.
Yeah. And kind of in the same conversation in terms of, I look at the first 6 months of this company. We, incorporated in February of last year. And for the first 4 or 5 months, really, it was just Chelsea and I, pure passion, pure ideation. And it was me slinging code 10, 12 hours a day, just building something that we thought was going to help the world. And that was just us. It was an extension of us. As soon as the money hits the bank account, the dynamic changes a little bit. And I think that's just natural. It's human nature. And now it becomes, how are we going to monetize this thing? How are we going to get other people to use it? And it really, it's a challenge. It's a challenge to stay true to the vision. I mean, it was the passion and what we were building that got us into that room. Sometimes becomes very easy once you leave that room with the money in the bank account to change. The money changes people, right? Yeah. So I think we've gone through that. We went through a month or two where maybe we got pulled off the vision a little bit more than we would have liked. But when you take a step back, you breathe, and you just get back to building something beautiful that has a purpose and it's from the heart, that's where, the money really starts to take care of itself if you let it breathe a little bit. I think that's what I've felt as a founder anyways in the last 6 months.
Chelsea, what's your perspective? I appreciate you're both on kind of different sides of this, but yet in the center is this vision, is this thing that you're building.
Yeah, I think Adam and I came from very different backgrounds, right? He's been in like a high risk tech for his career. I, was in more of the corporate side of things, ending kind of that traditional corporate piece with a C-suite position. And I think what that has helped us with a little bit is, being comfortable with being patient. And, maybe the right solution doesn't always have to come to you in a day. And I think in tech, you move really quickly and it's easy to get, a little bit impatient and wanting to make the right decision and wanting to have a plan right away. But I think the experience of both of our careers has given us a little bit more patience and a little bit more insight into the value in not being so quick to rush into everything, whether that be an investment, whether that be the new feature on the app or hiring or any of those different things. I think we've been able to sit back a little bit and go, okay, let's maybe sit on this for a week. Let's see how we feel about this tomorrow. Versus, 5 years ago, both of us probably would have been like, nope, we got to go this direction. This is how we're going to do it. And honestly, we probably would have crashed and burned by now if that's the approach we would have taken.
Oh, a little age, a little wisdom, a little experience. And those don't all come together. Like age doesn't make wisdom and wisdom doesn't make age. But when you put them all together, I do find things sometimes slow a little. I was doing some work around, I'm a big advocate of curiosity and all that it entails. And I was reading a Harvard Business Review and they said the number one reason that curiosity gets sidelined in most US corporations, it was a Harvard Business Review. So eventually you can throw the HBR credibility behind it, is because no one wants to take the time. Curiosity is we don't have time. We have to get shit done. Like, but curiosity, and the same article is where innovation comes from, where collaboration comes from. But we're too busy. We're too busy to be curious. What I just heard you say is like, maybe slow down, maybe sleep on it. Sober second thought, like all those jokes, they're very, very real. And I've often woken up and not sent that email the next morning. I'm gonna write it because it feels good, whatever. Especially if there's a little heat on it. I'm gonna wait and go, whoa, really glad I didn't push send on that one. But that's taken a while. I think we all get there, sometimes kicking and screaming, or not at all.
Yeah, I think there's this like idea that in order to innovate, we need to constantly be pushing, and whiteboarding.
That is the story that gets told, for sure. It does. Yeah.
The purest innovations that we've built into our product, and I think the sort of the core foundational pieces that we've built have come from me sitting in silence and meditating and allowing my brain to slow down and be what it is, just pure awareness. And that's where the good ideas come from. That's where the real successful ideas come from. It's not from constantly trying to hit the next checkpoint. If you don't give yourself and you don't give your mind time to be what it needs to be, that's where you get lost in the shuffle. That's where I've got lost in the shuffle. So I'm always going to come back to take time for mindfulness, take time for meditation, and just trust that your mind and you know what's best if you just let yourself be that. If that makes any sense.
It absolutely does. And I think it also gives us an opportunity to talk about, I could geek out on the business all day. I love it, but I'm also really curious about the app and even just what you said. And I'm assuming a lot of this app and a lot of this daily companionship is to help me, the user, experience maybe a little bit what you just said. Am I right to draw those, kind of bridge that gap?
Yeah, 100%. Whether it's, doing a 30-minute workout designed for recovering addicts, or if it's writing a 2-minute gratitude list, or if it's walking through a 10-minute meditation. The entirety of our product is built on the premise that addiction isn't the problem. It's a response to the true problem, which is that underlying dysfunction in our relationship with our thoughts, right? So we actually just had a push notification sent out this morning. We have inspirational notifications that go out that are inspired by other recovering addicts. And one this morning went out that my addiction isn't the problem, it's a solution, and that's the problem. Right. So
I like that a lot. Yep.
Everything that we do is designed to help our members retrain their brain and find a different way of thinking and living and different response patterns and all of that. So yeah,
you're creating a little forgiveness. You're creating a little space even in that statement, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Creating space between thought and reaction. That's really what it comes down to. Because as a recovering addict, there was no space. If I had a stressful moment, I was going to go gamble to deal with it. If I had a really successful moment, excuse me, I was going to go gamble to kind of keep that high. Yeah.
My mom used to say I should, before I shoot off my mouth, I should make sure my brains are loaded. So that's the first, I haven't thought of that for like 20 years, but when you said the reaction to the action, that's the first thing that popped into my mind.
Mom knows best.
Yeah, I've been working on it. Yeah, no, I've been it's consistent work in progress. So how many users do you have? What's one of your key metrics? Is it users? Is it user interaction? What are some of the top KPIs you look at in terms of the engagement with your product?
So we're actually still what we would call in phantom mode. Our iOS app is in the App Store. We haven't put a dime into marketing yet. Of course, we are talking about it here, and we've talked about it on Jade's podcast. But we are still waiting for our Android app to be launched, which will be coming up in about a month or so. And sort of beyond that, we have really, really big visions with what we're building in the AI and machine learning space. So,
in terms of the intelligence that the system will be able to garner from how you use it, how you interact, those types of things.
Exactly. And then really our goal here is to build.
That's exciting. I guess I'm excited to just hear you say it.
It's such a fun problem to be working on, trying to build a bridge between tech and human. And like really doing that in a special way. We're super excited.
And in a real, and I say this kindly, in a real messy space, right? Because there's being human, and I think that's just messy, period, and that's okay. That's not a negative. I think it's okay to be a messy human. But you're talking about a very specific area that's really robbing people of their joy and taking away life experiences for this other addictive experience.
Exactly. Yeah. To come back to your question though, Tyler, our sort of KPI at this point with the members that we do have, which we were still, I think, in a beta test, and I think we've got 140 members at this point, something like that. It's how much time are our members spending engaged in these activities. So we have
actual use. It's like I bought a gym membership. Am I going to the gym?
Exactly. So we're not really concerned with number of members at this point. It's really not something that we're tracking or worried about, because we just haven't, that's not where we're at. We're not really trying to increase that number yet. But for the people that are using it, are they getting value from it? Are they spending time in meditation? Are they reaching out to us and saying, wow, this changed the way that I look at the world? And honestly, we've received that feedback. People have reached out to me and to Chelsea and to us and said, what I listened to today changed the way that I view the world today. And if we can do that for even one person,
change the colored glasses I was wearing today.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think if we can help one person find that, then we can help 1 million people find that. And when the time comes, when we have our product ready to roll and we put, the marketing dollars that we are going to put behind this, then we'll find out, and the KPIs will change at that point. But for now, it's really just about engagement.
Well, I'm assuming so much of what you just explained is just a nice way to say, well, we're working to fall in love with our customers' version of the situation. We're really working hard on product market fit. I don't want 10,000 people not getting value. I want 50 people or 5 people or 1 person getting value, which is really the fit conversation. And does it work the way you want and have the outcome the user actually will benefit from?
Exactly.
Is how I had to put that into those terms.
Exactly.
Do you get any pushback from your investors at this point around, hey, why don't you focus on this number? Or back to your point, Chelsea, about the right investors, they get your business, so they're not pushing you into some of those, I don't want to call them vanity metrics, but maybe the wrong metric too soon.
I think we have the right investors, right? They have. I'm
sensing that. I'm sensing.
Yeah, they have the patience, to kind of grow with us. I mean, we did have our first paying customer a couple of weeks ago, and
that's an exciting moment. That's real. Someone actually gave us money for the thing. They saw value enough. I love it.
Yeah, and I mean, our investors were thrilled to share in that with us. So they've been great. I mean, obviously, like Adam mentioned, there will be a time and place where we need to transition, and the numbers become important. But at this point, they're willing to discover what works best for us, so that when that actually becomes important, we're really set up to accelerate properly.
I appreciate that. Adam, getting back to the future, and probably what really blows your hair back as a tech guy, as a coder, how do you balance out the barrage of the promises of what technology, it's hard not to say technology without just saying AI right now, the promise of what's being touted versus what's real, and how do you juggle those two as kind of chief technical guy who's running the plan on this thing, to not get wrapped up in the shiny versus the reality? How do you keep those two in check? Great
question. I don't know. We're still figuring that out. We had a team meeting
yesterday. I love
your
honesty, man. I love that. That is a very honest answer.
We had a team meeting yesterday, and I used the analogy that I feel like, Jordan, our head of innovation, and I strapped ourselves to a rocket and just blasted ourselves into outer space with all of these really big ideas. And
back in those early days of the rocket test, when they really didn't know what was going to happen.
That's exactly.
Just shoot it up, and maybe it'll come back down. Maybe I'll be able to find it again.
Well, when we hired Jordan, we said, let's take 2 to 3 months to not even really worry about building something tangible. Let's just get as far outside of the box as possible with what we can do. And
that fun. That sounds like a playground. That sounds great.
It's exactly. And we together have done that. It's been an absolute technical playground, finding really, I'm trying not to spill the beans here on specifics.
I'm dying for you to spill the beans, but
we're working with an IP lawyer.
We'll talk offline.
Our IP lawyer would kill me if I started spilling the beans on some of these things as we get into trademark applications.
It's too soon, Adam. Shut up, Adam. Jesus.
Yeah, but finding a way to unravel the picture of what it means to be human and pull some of those data points down with technology. But really, the ultimate goal is not to get more attached to technology. It's to be more human, right? How can we use technology in a way that allows us to be more human? Let's not use technology to become more distracted and more immersed in the things that are dragging us down. Let's use technology to uncouple us from those distractions and from our phones and from these things.
A little more forest bathing and a little less social media, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So that's the ultimate challenge. But the way we're doing that when we get into our deep tech it's overwhelming. It's the thing that keeps me up at night. It's like floating in outer space right now, not quite sure not quite sure
Yeah,
which
you rode the
planet we're going
rocket
to
up,
land
but
on.
now you're still trying to now you're bouncing off the atmosphere, or however we want to play out this metaphor.
Yeah, like which planet are we going to land on? We're eventually going to land somewhere, and we're really confident that that's going to be a beautiful space. But right now, to answer your question, we're not quite sure what the end product is going to look like, though we do have kind of a North Star that we're aiming towards, and we're feeling pretty good about.
And do you feel fundamentally that accessibility to, like, once you figure out where that planet is, are you going to need $100 million to get there, or is the technology accessible for the level of funding and what makes sense for a startup?
Hugely accessible. It actually blows my mind.
That's pretty exciting. Yeah.
Like the open source.
If you can dream it, it's available, right? That's pretty wild.
Yeah, we're at that point. I think we've always, as a society, been at that point where if you can dream it, you can make it happen.
Yes, we live in a very privileged part of the ecosystem, the world that we live in, where most of, like, just to be able to have access to dream that big, right?
Yeah, I know there's this kind of, and this is maybe getting off track, but there's this idea that, you know, the 90s were so much better, or the 80s were so much better, or whatever it is. But like if you romanticizing the past phenomenon, it's flawed every time, all the time, in my opinion. If you zoom out, is there a better time to be alive than right now? I know there's things going on, and it's my personal opinion. I don't know if anybody else will resonate with this, but the more beauty that the world holds, there's got to be sort of the polarity of that, right? So there's a lot of negative stuff going on. It's where you decide to put your awareness, though, and where you decide to put your focus. What we have available to us in terms of technology and travel around the world in like 6 hours, just whatever it is, we live in such an incredible time. If you just kind of tune out all the negative stuff that can come with it, it's a really beautiful time to be alive.
It's back to that accident. I wrote an article. You know, when is all that thinking actually not good for us? I was watching a. Have you ever seen It's a Dog? Now we're at the end, so if people are still listening, I'm okay to go off in left field. Have you ever watched It's Outer Worlds, Inner Worlds?
I have not.
It's a very cool documentary that was done a bunch of years ago, but it really talks about the vibration and the frequency that the world focuses on, and how the modern world has really disconnected us from that. And it goes from Kundalini yoga goes back through history and paints this very interesting picture. It uses a lot of science. So it's not just the yoga side of the philosophy or the mystic side, but there's one line. It's like, have we ever stopped to ask ourselves if all this thinking was good for us? And it's just resonated with me for years. And you made the comment earlier about overthinking and then self-medicating, and versus getting connected to maybe more the natural world and respecting technology and using it, but not having it use you. We're at an interesting inflection point right now where you're right. You can get really like, oh, it's so all bad. I'm like, wait a second, it's not actually. But where you're coming from will facilitate the good or bad filter.
I'm
jumping right in the philosophical chain with you here, guys.
I absolutely love it. And I think as a society, even, you know, myself, you get caught up in chasing the external. You chase the next paycheck, you chase the next investor. What's wrong with just stepping back and being mystical and just appreciating like the vastness of the human experience, and just when you really step back. I've lived a life of deeply like external, going to Vegas craziness.
Yep.
You know what's better than that is laying in bed, meditating. The beauty of the human mind, when you really plug into it, that's where the juice is. That's where the true happiness is. So yeah, we've as a society really got maybe overly intertwined in chasing these external things that don't last. The shine of a new car. I'm a marketer.
We're only one tooth whitening away from self-actualization. Like, let's be honest. Like, you know, because if I'm satisfied, my consumerism goes down, and now we're opening up a whole other can of worms. It's just fun to play with. I think it's all fine, but be aware, and be mindful of it. And obviously, you're creating a product very specifically to help people live in that space, with the direct problem to be solved of addiction. But I'm going to argue that this is playing a much bigger game than that, I would say.
Yeah. I think that's in line with
if I was going to philosophize my own perspective from the outside, listening to you both talk.
Yeah. I mean, addiction is the first space that we're in. We have, you know, with the technology we're building, maybe, hopefully we can expand beyond that into a larger space.
Helping people solve that is a life well lived. Like, let's be blunt, like that, you know, just, you know, entering into a space where people are suffering and they've tried and they're frustrated and they're discouraged. And, you know, the awareness that I think COVID helped even bring to that, you know, and I know this is where Jade and I talk often about just that awareness around the conversation to bring a piece of technology. I'm already on my phone anyways. Why don't we find a way to maybe use it to shift me in a better direction, not take me deeper down the rabbit hole?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, before we get into the whole other version of this conversation, Adam Chelsea, so good to chat with you guys. Thanks for walking us through the business, and thanks for moving to Calgary. On behalf of Calgary, I will thank you, because I definitely have told a story and really come to believe that there's a lot of cool opportunity here, and to be able to chat with both of you and see that you saw that from the outside, and you literally put your money where your beliefs were, and you showed up, and you moved here in winter. I moved here 25 years ago in the middle of February. And I was like, looking back on it, 26-year-old me didn't know any better, but it probably was a really risky move to drive across the country in the middle of February. But I made it, and here I am 25 years later. I left for a few years and moved to LA, but I ended up coming back. The quality of life here. And the last 5 years and our shift and our diversification and the inclusiveness of the Venn diagrams overlapping more when it comes to tech and energy and biotech and all of the amazing things, it's a cooler city than it was even 5 years ago from my personal point of view. So welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If somebody wants to, I know you're in phantom phase or beta phase. If someone's listening and they're like, hey, I know somebody really personally, it might be me. How do I get involved? Is there an opportunity for them to reach out, go to the website? What's access look like right now if somebody's really inspired after this chat?
Yeah, if you have an iPhone and you're curious, you just want to play around a little bit and sort of put a product to what we've been talking about, you can search us on the App Store, AlchemistOne. It's available to download. If anybody's listening and wants to try it out, you can use promo code AWARE, and that'll give it to you free for a year. Again, eventually we're going to really want to monetize this thing, but at this point, we're just looking for feedback. So we'd love you to try it out. There's a feedback tab inside of the app too that you can send us your thoughts. We would absolutely love that.
I'm going to go on because I want to experience it. But I love your website. I told you this when I met you. I love the color choices you made. There's something about it that just elevates the experience for me. I'm really very curious to get inside the app and see, because what you've certainly created is very aesthetically beautiful, and I think that helps. It makes a difference. It helps people resonate. The level of credibility, and it looks very, very legit. And I say that a little bit tongue in cheek, because sometimes in the startup phase, that's tough to pull off the brand side. And I think you guys have done a really good job on it. So kudos to you on that.
Really appreciate you saying that. One of the things, going back to earlier in the conversation, we were talking about our competitors. So many of the addiction recovery apps in the space, almost all of them, honestly, give you that very doctor's office type feel.
Yeah.
Overly cloudy in a way, if that even makes sense. As a recovering addict coming in, high on chasing that dopamine and spending a ton of time on online gambling websites where they put millions and millions of dollars into product development.
They know how to push our buttons. Absolutely.
Yeah. So we wanted to build something that was beautiful and that got people engaged visually, and that it wasn't just plain old, 2D type stuff that made you feel sort of like you were getting into something that wasn't cool. We wanted to build something that was fun and then made addiction recovery attractive. So I really appreciate you saying that. That's kind of what we were shooting for.
And I appreciate the intention. I think you guys did a fantastic job. I'm going to go in and use the code, and I'm going to check it out because I'm really, really, really curious. And I'm big into all the things, I like thinking about this also as just another form of fitness and health and taking care of yourself. And our world is showcased to go to the gym and do the cardio, but what about the thing on the inside? And I think apps like this really start to open that door for people. And I know that there's an addiction angle. I think we can all benefit from a little more awareness of our own thoughts.
Yeah, wonderful. I encourage anyone that's listening, and you, Tyler, as well. There's two series actually by Cez inside of the app that have the addiction lens, but that are just profound and life-changing. So I'd be curious, Tyler, we'll have a chat maybe in a couple weeks if you dive in and see what you think.
I see a hangout in our future.
Absolutely. Yeah.
If somebody wants to get a hold of either you, is there LinkedIn? Do you have a preferred?
LinkedIn's great. Chelsea and I are both on LinkedIn. Our website has a couple of contact options as well, alchemistone.io. You can find us walking through the +15 walkway in Calgary.
Twice a day for 40 minutes. I love it.
I'm pretty tall, so I stand out. Feel free to flag us down.
Hey, you're the alchemist. Yeah, absolutely. Being accused of being an alchemist is a lovely compliment.
Yeah.
Thank you both for coming on. That was a really good chat. Good to get to know you, and legitimately excited to have you both in our ecosystem.
Awesome.
Thanks, Tyler.
Appreciate you.